Hey, welcome to Caching in the Northwest, where sometimes the intro doesn't work the way you want it to. This is the podcast from the birthplace of geocaching right here in the great Pacific Northwest. Now, it's Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific. I'm Chris of the Northwest, and we're going to talk about geocaches and geocachers from here and all around the globe. Oh, that sounds like I just went through puberty. So while you're actively avoiding starlets on the slopes, we'll be caching in the Northwest.
That's right. And tonight's topic, well, we're going to be talking about virtual rewards. It's going to be great. We've got a special guest, Frau Potter. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
And as always, live audience, you know what to do. Jump in that chat. I see it scrolling by my screen already. So we want to hear what you have to think and all that. Just you make the show fun. But of course, before we get there, I'm Wits End, and it's time to bring in our glowing gibbon. Some say he's the guy in the picture when you buy a picture frame. And others say he modeled yoga pants to pay for university. All we know is he's called Land Monkey.
Hey, I thought we weren't going to bring up the whole yoga pants thing. All right, fine.
Oops, sorry. I
I
forgot.
can tell stories
knew
about
that
Chris now.
I knew
All
that
right.
one was made up because you never paid for university. But
Well, that's true.
okay.
I got by on yoga pants scholarships. All right. You know what? Good to be here. Good to be here. It's Thursday night. Good to be here with Sand with you and Chris at the Northwest and Frau Potter. Cindy, nice to see you again. It's been a while. I think the last time I saw you was in Seattle at the big event.
Yeah, that is likely. And I also was remembering the last time I was on this show was right before COVID.
The before times.
All right.
Yes. So that
Not
was
that
like,
those two things are related in any way. But
No, right.
Not
No
at all.
pandemics after I come on the show, please.
we are delighted to have you back. Always enjoy talking with you, Cindy.
Yes.
And
Thanks.
I think everybody's really piqued and curious about tonight's topic. So I saw you got lots of notes in the show notes there. So I think we'll have a good chat about virtual rewards. All right. But before we get into that, folks, well, let me tell you, it's time for a quick reminder that we appreciate the support of our patrons who help to keep this podcast coming each and every week. Thanks to Land Sharks, one of our corporate Denali level sponsors. Check out all their products online at landsharkz.ca. And hey, you know what? If you're planning a trip to Vancouver Island this summer, well, make sure you make a point to swing by Esquimalt, check out the store, find that cool high favorite point geocache outside, and
Yeah.
buy some cool stuff while you're there, and even just say hi to the staff. And if you're lucky, Shortbread might even be there.
Ooh.
And you don't know who Shortbread is. Well,
who is Shortbread?
I guess you're gonna have to find out.
You have to find out.
Oh.
I was going to say, and if you're not planning a trip to Victoria Esquimalt this summer, there's still time to plan one.
Indeed.
So
Indeed. And who knows, maybe even this coming holiday season, there may be a live podcast again from there. Who knows?
things have been known to happen up there. You just never
Yeah.
know.
He's crazy, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, you know what?
What?
Spending so much time talking about that corporate Denali level sponsor, I almost forgot to mention our other corporate Denali level sponsor. Well, that's Gold Country Geotourism. Visit exploregoldcountry.com. Learn more about the geotours and the region. Don't forget to download the app. And if you're planning trips to British Columbia, going over to Vancouver Island, well, why not plan a trip up to Gold Country and enjoy the beautiful scenery and amazing mountains and lakes and rivers and valleys and everything. They got it all.
You
Check
might
it
as well do both because they're like this far apart on a map.
out.
It's,
They're like right beside each
yeah,
other
how
on my
hard
map.
could it be?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's exploregoldcountry.com, or, on Facebook, just look Explore Gold Country, or on any social media platform, try Explore Gold Country. I bet you're going to find them. All right. Good stuff. And folks, if you want to know more about supporting this here podcast, anyone can do it. You don't have to be Land Sharks or Gold Country. Anybody can support the podcast. All you have to do is head on over and click that Patreon link on the cashingnw.com a website.
did you know Dora Moore was in Victoria today?
Ooh.
I didn't know.
Gotta love the free ferry for old people.
Oh, that's
Indeed.
nice.
Yes.
I wonder how much she paid to get on.
Yeah. So she probably paid full price, but
Yeah, I'm sure.
One day soon.
And CRS98 said the last time I saw Cindy was a few weeks ago whilst paddling about finding caches.
Fun.
Kayak caching.
That was a super fun day.
Awesome. Was there an event associated with that, or?
Yes, there was. It was a geocaching event and then an optional activity afterwards to go find a bunch of T5 caches. So it was really fun and totally inspiring because there were people that hadn't been on the water, they said, in 5 years. So I think it motivated people to get out, and it made me think about those optional activities that you can do after a social event, that it helps people to maybe feel more comfortable to do something fun like that.
Mhm.
Very cool. Lots of fun.
I think
Fabulous.
we
Now,
counted
folks,
there were 17 boats on the water.
Wow.
holy cow. So somebody without a boat could have just walked up to the cache,
I think
stepped from boat to boat.
Across the boat.
seems that way. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, not that many boats? Okay.
Oh, Komakino says the first lackey tag that he found was a Frau Potter tag. Very cool. Yes, definitely. I was going through
Nice.
that slight segue here. I won't stay too long on this because we want to get to our topic, but I was going through our trackables collection last weekend and starting to go, okay, now where do I have ones that I haven't activated yet, get them into the collection? And it's so fun to go through and go, oh yeah, and I remember when I met this person at this event and I met this person. Really enjoy that exercise. A lot of fun.
It's a nice aspect of the game, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very nice that that people will do that. All right.
If
We got
you
some
want to
hashtags,
join in,
Chris.
I do. I was going to start with the hashtags. If you want to join into tonight's chat, why don't you use the hashtag virtual to ask a question? Because we know you want to ask questions. In fact, there are already some in that chat.
There are.
Of course, you can use the hashtag FATAS if you want to bring up something in the after show. And I already see some other hashtags, like hashtag odd sounds coming from Land Monkey.
That wasn't from me. I just heard it in my headphones. I was looking around.
I don't know where it came from.
Hashtag podcast baking to tell us what you've got cooking tonight. And of course, hashtag podcast drinking to tell us what you're sipping on.
That's a lot of hashtags. Awesome.
I know. And they keep growing. We should probably thin them out one time.
Thin out the herd.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, speaking of lots of fun things, folks, it's we got a little bit of news here before we jump into things. First of all, first challenge of the Wheel of Challenges was spun this week. So if you're not familiar with what that is, well, there's a wheel, like, Wheel of Fortune, kind of wheel that spins around and has
Wheel of
stuff on it.
Fish.
Sorry?
Wheel of Fish.
Also Wheel of Fish, yes.
Yes.
We had one of those at Geo Woodstock in the GPS Adventure Maze Canada.
yes.
We had a wheel there near geocaching fortune.
Did
But
it
anyhow,
have fish on it?
no, it had fun things to do whilst geocaching. Maybe even had kayaking on there. I can't remember. But anyhow, there's one at HQ, and they gave it a spin, and it landed on Seeking Smileys, which I think is what we do all the time in the game. But
Pretty close.
there's a nuance. Let me tell you what it is. This challenge is all about seeing how many geocaches and Adventure Lab locations you can find in 1 month. And in fact, it's slightly less than a month, but round it up. From April 3rd, which is coming up in just a few days, to April 30th. I think they always start the souvenir challenges on a Monday. So that seemed to make sense. Cindy's nodding. Yes, you are correct. Thank you. From April 3rd to 30th, you have a chance to earn 3 new souvenirs, one for easy level, one for medium level, and the third one for hard level of the challenge. Easy is find and log 5 caches or Adventure Labs to earn the first souvenir. Medium is find and log 10, and then you get the second souvenir. And for the third souvenir, you're going to have to work on that one. 100 caches from April 3rd to April 30th. I think we can do it. I think we'll go.
I think we can, especially since Adventure Lab stops counts as a smiley.
Oh, okay.
I-
Maybe, yeah, that might get in.
I'm thinking they should add a ludicrous level, you know, kind of like ludicrous speed.
Yes. Very cool. All right.
No coincidence that Ludicrous and Land Monkey both start with L.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Total randomness. All right. That's it for the
Well,
news.
Okay, that's very good news. I like these challenges, you know. I do have to admit it kind of changes my everyday geocaching. I plan out more like, well, maybe I'll wait until it starts. You know, let's just push it off a day or two to get in. Now we're what, 3 days away, 4 days away from that start. So maybe I won't go this weekend. Maybe I'll wait till next week to go get those smileys. Just because, you know, that's the kind of guy I am. We want to formally introduce our guest and welcome Cindy or Frau Potter back. You said it's been since January 2020. I'm sorry, we should have had you on more often. You're one of our favorite guests. Now,
You say that to everybody, I think.
No, we don't say it to Rock Chalk.
no. There are certain people at HQ we like.
... Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. You happen to be one of them. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? How long have you been caching and anything else you want to throw in there?
Sure. And first, I'll say thank you for hosting and for all your work to kind of build community through podcasting. That is something I think we don't often remember to thank people for when we go on these podcasts, because it takes a lot of volunteer time to pull this kind of thing off. So thank you. Yeah, so I am Frau Potter. I started caching with my husband in 2004. But the truth is that I had a different account at that time. And when I became a lackey in 2011, I created my Frau Potter account, actually 2010. But anyway, it wasn't until a few years into being a lackey that I discovered my old 2004 account where I had logged 2 caches. And so literally I have like a 7-year slump. But anyway, I started officially in 2004, and those are my 2 finds that I had in 2004. And I think that's what you asked me.
That is exactly what I asked you.
That's right. I was going to say, whether somebody started caching in 2004, 2011, or 2023, we're just glad that everybody's out playing the game. And everybody has a little bit different experience and different memories. So out of your caching experiences, do you have maybe a most memorable experience caching?
Yeah, I find this question so hard, as I would imagine you all would.
Yes,
if
I
you
do.
were actually asked, had to respond your most memorable, because my mind jumps around and it goes to lots of different things. I honestly, Cliff, did think about the paddle event from just recently, because sometimes it's about those surprising days or moments that you don't really expect. So I can't choose one. So I'll just go with that paddle event, riffing off of that, because I don't know, there must have been 40 people there or so. And then 17 boats, but many of the boats had 2 people in them. And the cache owner had literally put out, I think it was 5 new T5 caches in the Stillaguamish River. Oh, no, not the Stillaguamish. Oh my goodness, I'm getting my snow. Oh my goodness, I can't even think of the.
I bet you
the Sammamish River.
Oh, okay.
The Sammamish River. Anybody who's not from the Northwest would know that between Squim and Snoqualmie and Stillaguamish.
It's confusing at times. Absolutely.
Yeah, so he put out some new caches, but already had several that were out there. And so I think that day we got 10 or 11 different T5 caches, and just a lot of camaraderie. Some folks that hadn't been on the water in a long time, and there was a lot of cooperation too, because sometimes you need that when somebody's in an awkward boat. It's hard for them to reach the cache.
Yeah.
Was it
So
like a follow the current downriver kind of paddle caching? Is that?
No, I mean, it was very slow moving, so
Okay.
no trouble. We're not talking whitewater or anything like that. Almost more like a slough.
Okay.
Very quiet water, so no trouble to paddle.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. That sounds like a great highlight, and I'm sure you've had so many amazing geocaching experiences. It would be hard to just pick one. You've joined us tonight, or we've asked you to join us tonight, and you've been very gracious to accept, because we were really curious about learning more regarding the virtual rewards. Now, you are recognized as somewhat of an expert on this topic. When I reached out to HQ and said, we want to talk about virtual rewards, he said, well, then you're going to need to talk to Frau Potter, because there's really nobody else to talk to on this topic. So I'm curious why your name came up right away. What is it that your role is at HQ, where they would say, oh, no, don't talk to me. Talk to Frau Potter.
Well, I'll explain my role, but I'll first say that the reason I'm an expert on virtual rewards is not because of my role, but because it was my idea.
Okay.
And ideas and follow through could not anybody, but many people in their role at HQ could project manage something. I happen to have done this in my role, but it's not necessarily because it's from my role. But anyway, I'll go to my role. So I am director of community, which means I oversee 2 teams at HQ for a total of 14 people. And those teams are doing direct support for the community. So email support, also social media, posts, taking care of all the volunteers, being in charge of the guidelines, both for geocaching and for Adventure Lab, greeting the visitors in the HQ Visitor Center, supporting mega and giga events, doing PR. Our group at one point said that we are the mystery cache type of the HQ teams because we do so many different things within one team. But virtuals, locationless caches, community celebration events, they were all kind of ideas that came from our team because we're in a position where we have a close relationship with the reviewers, and we can kind of come up with ideas that maybe don't require engineering resources, but might end up being a win for the community. So that's what my role is.
It sounds like your team does everything except code.
Come up with things
Well,
require engineering, and yet
there's legal and finance
Right.
and human resources. We don't do those things.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny though, like just sidebar for a moment, that you mentioned that legal and human resources and finance. I think a lot of us tend to forget that there are lackeys who do things that aren't directly pertaining to the game, because it's, what have you got, close to 100 folks working there?
Yeah, it's close at this point. Yeah.
So that's a big company, and you need all that stuff. So
right. And
tend to
office
forget about that.
management and yeah. But a lot of them are passionate about geocaching. So it makes it fun for us all to be collaborating together.
Very cool.
I love that. Now, we have new listeners, we have longtime listeners, we have new geocachers, we have geocachers who have been going since year 2000. To help level the playing field, can you explain to us what a virtual reward is? How long has it been going on? You know, how do you get one? Those kind of things.
Sure. So virtual rewards are a type of virtual cache. So there are lots of different cache types in geocaching, and the virtual caches are ones that were available for anybody to publish from kind of the beginning-ish time till 2005. And then we stopped publishing those, and because we had quite a number of problems with them. And then we didn't publish any for 12 years. So the virtual caches are the ones where you don't need a physical placement. And, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but yes, I'm trying to explain it for anybody that doesn't know this. So you don't need a physical placement. It can be, something like a plaque at the top of a mountain, or it could be a statue in a public square. So it doesn't have to have a plastic container or a logbook. So instead, you have a logging task associated with that. And so for 12 years, we had no new geocaches. I'm sorry, no new virtual caches. And yet at HQ, we would always hear people, part of my job and my team's job is to listen to the community, to hear feedback, to respond to questions. And of course, we got a lot of questions about why can't you bring back virtuals? And we kind of stopped listening at some point, and because we would always give the same answer, because they caused too much trouble. They caused too much trouble. They caused too much trouble. The reviewers hated them. It ended up being just because their virtual placements have no proximity rules. People would place too many of them and with not enough thought into making them meaningful experiences. And that got really frustrating for the volunteers. So we didn't publish them anymore. Virtual rewards was a way to bring them back in a limited way. So that started in 2017 with our first launch of 4,000 virtuals. Then we did another launch in 2019 of 4,000 and another launch in 2022 of 4,000. So we've had 3 different launches. So it's a legacy cache type, meaning that you can't just open up the website and create one of these at any moment in time. So it's not one of the drop-down options, but these limited, I think of them as limited release cache types, because then we figure if we only give out one per person, they're more likely to put more thought into it and less trouble for the reviewers.
Wow, that's a lot of information. And yeah, I remember the early virtuals, and I thought it was really cool when they decided to do some more rounds of rewards. You dropped a little hint there, a little thing in there that I didn't want to let go by. That it was your idea, and that's something I didn't know. That's awesome. Was there a specific spark idea or something that triggered that idea in your head?
Oh yeah. Let me think. It's so funny that the time goes by, but I think I was talking to Brian, and I think Jeremy had an idea about bringing back webcams, actually. And so Brian brought that idea to me, and I said, well, that's really funny, because I actually think a better idea is to bring back a limited set of virtuals. And Brian was like, oh, could you do that? And we started brainstorming just how that could work. And I do want to do a shout out to Mountain Bike, John Stanley, because he has been a really strong partner in this. So he was probably one of the first people I talked to about how we might be able to pull this off. And we have iterated a few different times now and tried to make improvements along the way. But he has been somebody that I've worked closely with on the releases.
Nice.
I think just as an observation, because I was one of the people very lucky in this last round to have received one. Thank you. And it was so exciting to get the email of like, oh, I have one to give. And then it's that okay, oh my goodness, I've got my one shot. I've got to
Make
do
it
this the
good.
best I can do it. And so then, you know, that you got almost a year to kind of work through it and everything. And so, you know, we played around with a lot of different ideas. And then the other fun piece, and that's for the whole geocaching community, is like as that deadline gets closer and closer, all of a sudden, like within the last 2 to 3 weeks before the deadline, all of a sudden, boom, 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 there's virtuals everywhere. Like, yes, we get to go find virtuals. So
Yeah, human behavior, right? Everybody waits till the last moment, even though they were dying to get a virtual.
Yeah.
They wait until the last minute to publish them.
too funny, too funny. So given that experience, my own experience, but you know, also your reflections there, it does raise a question. I think I've even seen this question come up in the chat, but can you share with us how many virtual rewards were granted last year? And then maybe a follow-on question to that, of that, of all of those that were granted, given out, the ability to place a virtual, how many people actually did place a virtual cache?
Yeah, so this last round, there were 4,000 that we gave out, and 3,566 have been published in 86 countries. And I did the quick math on that, and that's 89% of those that were distributed. And you may remember, I think it was April of last year, or maybe it was the year before, if my mind isn't playing tricks on me, that we decided to allow adoptions. I think it was last year. So I think that does improve the publish rate a bit, because there were some people, especially in the last few weeks or so, that just decided, I can't pull it off for whatever reason, personal reasons. Maybe they just, things changed in their lives and they didn't want to put the effort in, but they had a friend or someone in their community that they knew really wanted to have a virtual. And so now we allow them to be adopted out, the unpublished virtuals or the published ones, the active ones.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I'm impressed she did that 89% calculation in her head. I know that.
Good math skills.
Yeah, that's me.
So obviously limited number, so not everybody gets one. There's got to be a secret sauce formula. We know Land Monkey's on a very special list at HQ. We won't say what that list is or which lists he's on. But how does HQ decide, I guess, is the question that everybody wants to know. Are there certain criteria that somebody has to meet to qualify? Or does somebody apply for it? Or do you decide just
Right.
big hat full of names that you pull names out of a hat?
Well, let's just say, let's see, it was Jeremy has the Let's Make Better Mistakes Tomorrow. John and I did learn from our first round, when we did have an algorithm that kind of tried to choose cache owners, that didn't go over very well with the community. So what we decided to do the second round and the third round is that we created an opt-in process. Part of it was that the first go around, it was a surprise to people. And many of the people may not have even been paying attention or realized that they got a virtual, and so they didn't end up publishing it. Off the top of my head, I want to say 63%, so 2/3 of the people in the first round did publish their caches, but in the second round it was like 92%, and then this one 89%. So these last two processes, we did that as an opt-in. So you are effectively applying, and what we try to do is make kind of a reasonable low enough bar so that we could include lots of different countries also, because there are areas that don't have a lot of cachers. And so if we had a high bar for favorite points, for example, it might be hard to get a virtual in China or, Taiwan or Japan or Mexico or something. So we wanted to try to make it work all across the board, because it would be crazy if we, I think, tried to have a different criteria for every country. So basically the criteria was you couldn't have had a previous virtual reward awarded to you. You needed to own at least 2 active geocaches, and you needed to have hidden a cache in the last 4 years, and that you had, of all your owned caches, including any previous caches, you needed a total of 20 favorite points. And then there was an activity level. I think you needed to have posted a log on the website, a found it log or something within the last 6 months. So we're trying to look for people that are active in the game, and that they have put out some good hides. But also we needed to be able to get lots of people from lots of countries applying. And so from that, then it was pretty much a random, geographically spread drawing. So that's another area where John is super, super helpful, because there's a lot of under the hood kind of trying to figure out how do we make sure we are distributing these geographically. And people will always feel like, well, you didn't do it right that time. You didn't do it right that time. And so you do as best as you can. But yeah, we didn't want, basically what we were trying to correct was from the early round of virtuals, I think 81% of them were in the United States.
Whoops.
So, ooh, yeah. No wonder people were saying, bring back virtuals, right? Like,
Right.
There's geocachers all over the world now. And so there were, I think in like Czechia, there were like 4 or something. And, it's just like, yeah, how could you? It's not fair.
Well, as you said before, it doesn't matter what you do, somebody's going to say it's not fair. But I think the criteria that you and John used is fantastic. I mean, honestly, for an active geocacher, that's a relatively low bar to have to cross.
Right.
And I like that, you haven't won before and you have to apply. So you're not going to randomly choose sock puppet accounts. Hopefully right. It's going to be, most likely it's going to be people who have some sort of interest in the game, have been doing something for their local geocaching community because they've earned the 20 favorite points. And yeah, I really like what you and John have come up with there. I think that was about as fair as you can get.
Yeah.
So more questions for you, Cindy. And this is the big question that I think everybody is listening to find out here. With the publishing deadline having recently passed, are there any plans afoot to have a virtual rewards round 4?
We can't just celebrate what we already did.
Yeah, back off, everybody. Just enjoy the day.
No current plans. I think that it is always good to give the volunteers a bit of a rest. People, when you only have one, there are certain areas and certain reviewing areas where the community likes to push the envelope and come up with the most bizarre logging requirements, and that can get kind of hard on the reviewers. So no, we don't have any current plans right now. And I think, you do want to keep it special. So I do hear sometimes that there's that balance that you want to see, so that that they're quality experiences. But at the same time, I think it would be nice to give, more people an opportunity to have a virtual, like you received, Jay. But yeah, it would be a conversation with the reviewers, and I'm not going to have that conversation for a while. I'm going to give them a rest.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about that as a criteria for the decision making for HQ, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know that exactly as you described, that is a lot of effort extraordinary effort for the reviewing community volunteers to have to take on. And as we discussed earlier, we know it all happened in the last couple of weeks
Right.
of the right up against the deadline. So yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a good insight that we might not have thought about as to the reasoning.
Now, you mentioned the quality of hides and or referenced something along those lines. Are there certain restrictions, guidelines about if somebody is granted a virtual cache? Do you have any kind of guidelines, restrictions of where they can publish it, what kind of subject matter it might pertain to, something, anything, or just
Yeah.
all, anything goes?
Well, they're fairly simple guidelines, but I think the key difference with regular physical placements is that they don't have the proximity guidelines. So it makes it a lot easier to find a unique location and not have to worry about, is there another cache within 0.1 miles?
Yeah.
But of course, it still has to comply with the agenda guideline, no agenda guideline, and no commercial content guideline. So, so those are subject matters, I guess, that you would have to avoid. And then location-wise, there's a little more flexibility since you don't generally have as much maintenance. You should be checking on your cache and knowing whether anything's changed about it. But the general rule there is that you need to have visited the location within the last couple months. So it allows people to do a little bit more interesting locations. Like I just noticed today, we have a new one in Antarctica as part of this latest round. So yeah, geocachers go to some adventuresome locations like
Indeed.
Antarctica.
Yeah.
But then I looked, I think there's 6 there. So you could really get a lot of, but that's from all times of virtuals.
Sure. But so that begs the question, if the distance restriction doesn't apply, there must be I assume a limit on how many. You can't just pile 25 virtuals on the same place, right? Or can you?
Well, I mean, in theory you could, but the reviewers, I'm sure, would explain why that isn't a good idea. So here's an example of where I know it has happened. I think it's the Four Corners, and I'm not going to remember. It's Colorado, New Mexico. I'm going to have very show my bad geographic knowledge, but Four Corners area. There's 4 virtuals, and they're super close to each other, right? But there's a circumstance where I think it's still really fun because I think it's probably 4 different owners, and they effectively represent 4 different locations because you're getting 4 different states as part of it. So it's a clever use of close proximity. But I think everybody who's getting a virtual is probably savvy enough to not want to be right next to someone else's virtual. So yes, in theory, it doesn't break the guidelines, but I'm pretty sure reviewers would say, you realize this isn't going to be a good experience for people. Sure. Why don't you try to find something else? But if we didn't have these as limited releases, if we had it so people could just go to the drop down and do a virtual, I mean, I think they would just do virtual power trails. Like,
right.
What stops you from just sitting all day?
It's like other apps I've seen with piles and piles and piles of QR codes on top of each other. What good fun is
that? Yeah, there we go.
GSM times 2 says, I withdraw my comment about giving everybody one. Some group would create geo art of 200.
Yes.
There you go. Just finding our way helped with the geography question. Said it's Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. There you go.
Yay! There's a geocacher out there that knows their geography. Thank you for
you basically
saving
had
me.
it.
Yeah.
And Quads loves the Four Corners virtuals.
Yeah, when I heard about it, I thought, oh, please tell me we would allow that because Yeah, I would like to go also.
That's one of those places I'd love to visit someday.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to do that because, I looked into going there on my last vacation. It was like, it's a bit of a drive. Maybe I can do it. I can hit 4 corners. I can get those 4 state. But I want to say it was New Mexico that right there at the corner, there's a lot of reservation land that there are no caches placed on there. So having a virtual really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a thought. I know what my thought was.
That's my thing. That's my thing to forget what I was going to mention. You take another thing.
Okay, I did remember it briefly there. So one thought I still will pass along, and I probably said this after the last round of virtuals, is that I still am surprised that we don't have more people doing them in more wilderness areas. So back to your question of where did I originally get the idea, I forgot that I got it on a hike in North Carolina where I ran into some geocachers. It was not a long hike. It was, I want to say, Smoky Mountains area-ish. And the hike was maybe 3 miles or something. And at the end, there was a virtual. And I just thought, this is perfect because it's motivating. I might not have otherwise taken the time to do that hike, but I ran into some other cachers where it was actually a very vigorous activity for them. And they were super excited to get that virtual. And I thought, that would be nice if we could have more virtuals that required more physical exertion. And I think I was also thinking because some locations are not good for physical placements. And so I was hoping we would get more like that. But I think a lot of people want to do a statue, because it's like going to be visited by more tourists and stuff.
Sure.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of drive-bys in Antarctica.
No, that's true. That's pretty adventuresome.
That's going to have to look at my vacation schedule here in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say Land Sharks has a trip you could book to Antarctica next year.
Yep.
So travel.landsharks.ca. Check it out.
That fit in really well. You put yours on a mountain. Awesome.
Geocaching Freddy said I put mine on a mountain. So nice.
Way to score points.
Exactly. Now, Cindy, a few minutes ago, you said something and it got a lot of people excited here.
I saw the chat go wild
on this podcast. You talked about, webcam caches. That got people excited. Is there any chance of a limited release of new webcam caches? I know we're putting you on the spot here.
Well, we don't currently have any plans for that. I have put a little bit of thought into it. We had previously felt like there were a bunch of privacy issues. So those would have to be resolved. So for example, how do we know that someone just didn't put a camera up that they're going to be, taping people all day? And then what are they going to do with that footage? Like, how do we know a cacher didn't put up a private camera instead of it being like a wilderness webcam or something associated with a government agency? Or not that governments are trustworthy or anything, but
that's a whole other podcast.
Next week.
That's interesting, though. I hadn't thought about the legal issues around.
I hadn't thought of that aspect either.
We at HQ, we have spent a lot of time on privacy and legal issues. Europe has a lot of privacy laws that we had to comply with. California's had a lot of privacy laws. And so our brains sometimes think about, like, let's not get ourselves down a path that we can't recover from. My battery's running low.
Uh-oh. Are you not plugged in?
With that word.
I thought it was plugged in. Okay, whatever.
Frau Potter will be right back after she finds the electrical outlet.
Well, while you're looking for that, let's say Doramore logged a virtual today that was placed 20 years ago.
Oh,
Wow.
And we'll have to look to our reviewers. Does anyone check to make sure that the COs are still active after all that time?
So I'm not sure if people heard the question there, Chris, but the question being that how do we know if a CO is still active
after all that time and still
legacy
monitoring the
virtual?
logging requirements?
Yeah.
So
maybe if any of our reviewers in the chat have some thoughts around that, it'd be interesting. I see Cindy's still working there, getting the power reconnected.
I had never considered the legal ramifications.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what's going on with her webcam there.
Yeah, now you got webcam kaleidoscope there.
We can hear you, Cindy.
I kicked the cord at some point. Hold on, let me turn this off again.
So gonna have to put a disclaimer on for seizures for the camera.
Yeah. Do you want me to try to answer that?
Please.
Oh, yes, please.
Sure,
okay, even though I'm just going to be incognito. So, yeah, it's a great question. And
he was answering this question. It could be anybody.
That's right. That's right. I think that it's a good question and something that we should be thinking about for Earth caches as well as time goes on. You know, that it might not be good for the community if we have caches out there where we know nobody's paying any attention to the logging requirements. But at HQ for a long time, we have had a policy that's like no search and destroy. So we don't try to, we could easily do a huge swath of like looking at all the virtuals, which owners are no longer active, but I kind of have a hunch the community would get upset with us if we started, archiving their favorite virtuals. So we try not to get the community upset at us.
I call that an archive party, but yeah, I see where you're going. Hey, Startcacher brought up a really good suggestion here. Cindy, Kristen, pull that one up. Cindy, what do you think of this idea? He said maybe geocaching.com could grant each U.S. national park and other cache restricted areas. And hey, why limit it to the U.S.? But anyways, a couple of virtuals that they could publish, maybe with the help of the local geocaching associations.
I like that idea. That's a cool idea.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
It's a great idea, Startcacher. Thank you.
Nicely done. Maybe you could give the virtual caches to the geocaching associations, knowing that they have to go out to the parks and help with that. It might be the easier way to go around it that way. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you for the verbal processing.
Yes.
Chris, did you have something else you wanted to?
Well, I'm looking to see.
What are you looking
at?
No,
I'm just looking at. I'm sorry. I'm actually trying to read some of the responses here.
There's been a lot of responses.
Yeah. While trying to make sense of something to say. Geocaching Freddy says, I was surprised and thankful to receive my virtual reward. It just took a long time for me to decide where to place it.
Yeah, and apparently it was out in the wilderness. So good job.
That's great.
Exactly. Nicely done.
Oh no, we lost Cindy.
Potter completely.
Okay. Well, you know what? Why don't we jump to some more stuff from the chat, and we'll see if Cindy reconnects while we do that. What else have we got?
UDAC asks, how many virtuals exist, and is it more or less than Adventure Labs?
Ooh.
I bet there are more Adventure Lab locations, considering it's 5 to 10 stops.
Sure. But,
and virtuals. But that would be something that our research department is going to have to dig into. Otherwise, I start talking like Captain Kirk as I try to look all
Well,
this up while I'm talking.
and I don't want to steal Cindy's thunder either, because she had some stats for us, and I think she
Yeah.
was going to talk about total numbers. So maybe we'll see if Cindy reconnects. We'll get her to answer that question, and if she doesn't reconnect, we'll go through and see what we can answer.
Yeah.
So Wet Coaster had asked if there'll be another round being handed out. We did ask and answer
Yeah.
that one. Start Casher had another one here, wondering if someone was granted a virtual but adopted it out, are they still eligible for the next round? That is a great
Ooh,
question for
That's a
Cindy.
great question.
That's one we
Um,
can't
My
answer.
thought would be no, right?
because
Because they
you
won one.
you won one
right?
previously.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we'll see. Good question.
And if you couldn't publish that for one reason or another, then
Yeah.
maybe not for you.
I'm just quickly checking my email and everything to see if I had any messages from Cindy, but I don't see anything. Oh dear.
Well, we're coming up on an hour anyway.
Okay.
This has been a great discussion.
So
Cindy, if you're listening, thank you. We
Yes.
certainly appreciate you coming on.
So glad you came.
Chris, before we wrap it up, Cindy did have in the show notes a few
Okay.
stats here that I think maybe we should share with people, because it is related to some of the questions that have come up. So we were going to ask Cindy if there's any cool stats she'd like to share about the virtual rewards, and she did have a few in her back pocket here, and we're just going to say them for her because she can't. Oh, what's up? No, she's coming back. Look at that, just in time. You did it.
Welcome back.
I was
truly
just trying
are
to
the
avoid
best
having to
guest.
answer any more questions.
Sneaky.
Well, we had one more, and we were just loading it up for you here, so it's perfect timing.
Okay.
You had some cool stats prepared that you were going to share with our listeners around virtual rewards and virtual caches.
Yeah, sure. I just had a few, and yeah, I don't know what happened to my computer, but I'm sure other people have had this experience,
yeah.
in these remote environments
Oh,
where
yeah.
we're trying to figure out our mics. I don't know, my computer totally fell apart.
Oh, dear.
One of the things I looked at recently that I thought was really cool.
Oh,
Yeah. We're having a little bandwidth issues now.
It's so cool. Cool.
Can
Cool.
Cindy, you're kind of frozen there.
you still hear?
You're very broken up.
We can't hear you in a coherent sentence.
Yeah.
That's okay, Cindy.
Okay.
Oh, now
you're back.
Yeah, but we'll get a phrase or two.
Yeah.
We're having some real bandwidth issues there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
Go ahead.
Cindy, I can read out the stats for you if you'd like.
You can just nod in agreement.
Oh my gosh. All right. So what Cindy had shared with us, and we will share on her behalf because we don't trust her computer anymore, is that there are virtuals in 163 countries and territories around the world. That is a lot of places to go visit and find virtuals. Jim, do you want to take the next one?
Virtual rewards 3.0 have an average of 24% favorite points. So that also
Nice.
seems quite the accomplishment there.
Very cool. And Chris, did you want to take the last one there?
There are now more virtual reward caches than old virtuals. 1/3 are old, 2/3 are new. About 14,000 total active virtuals and only 4,335 old virtuals. So that means 9,791 new ones.
Chris, are you going to take credit for the math or give it to Cindy, who really did all the math there?
Well, I take the credit for reading. I didn't do any of the math.
That's amazing. I'm actually, so first of all, 14,000 active virtuals around the world. That's super cool. But the fact that there's now more virtual reward caches than grandfathered virtuals is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that many had had been given out. But
That is.
I
cool.
guess when from the stats you shared earlier about percentages deployed, etc., I guess that makes sense. And it's a great way of repopulating that type of cache in a controlled manner and really making sure not only is there some quantity, but there's quality
Yeah.
along with the quantity.
And there are a lot more geocachers now than there were when they were first, frozen or stopped. So,
Grandfather.
yeah, there you go. There's the word. Word's hard. It's late.
Too funny. Maybe one last thing. I just see there's a comment. Maybe this is a good one to end on here. For a little feedback for Cindy, maybe from Seabeck Tribe, who said, "I loved being awarded a virtual,
Oops.
and I put it in my small community on the Kitsap Peninsula."
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Very cool.
There you go. A great way to draw geocachers who are traveling around into smaller communities. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
good
I
job.
think it's fantastic because if there's a virtual, I'm going to go out of my way to go find it. So that certainly, and I think the 24% favorite point shows that the new virtuals have been put in good locations.
Yeah.
So
Cindy-
Cindy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I was going to
If-
say, I think she stabilized the connection.
I think she
Stabilized it.
has.
Okay.
Wanted to make
I
a
can
final.
stabilize enough to say goodbye.
If our listeners wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Through our help center, we have so you can write questions to us, and you can always write attention to Cindy Potter. You could also write me through my Frau Potter profile in Message Center. So it depends on whether it's a question about the game or something about I tend to have, from the Message Center, is more my player role instead of my job.
Nice.
All right.
And you know she's going to get back with you because you could see her tenacity just to get back on the podcast.
Yeah,
That's right.
So
we appreciate that.
thank you so much.
All
And
right.
yet she
Great to see you
persevered.
guys.
And thank you, listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Caching in the Northwest.
Absolutely. I want to take a moment to thank Land Sharks and Gold Country Geotourism, our two corporate Denali level sponsors. Land Sharks with the Z.ca is the outdoor adventure and geocaching store. Check them out online. They are shipping those orders daily. And for absolutely amazing geocaching adventures, check out exploregoldcountry.com. Folks, we want to thank all of our faithful Denali level supporters. That is Land Sharks, Gold Country Geotourism, Team Squirrel, Groovy Owl, and Cashly, the geocaching app. If you want to know more about supporting this here show, well, head on over and check that and click on that Patreon link on the cachingnw.com, a website.
Just like Skyhawker did.
And JCar.
And CRS 98,
And Ari 54321.
MC3 Cats.
Al Robrick,
B Pendragon.
Geocaches.
Boomer 365,
Donners.
Acrodoc.
Subaway Mark,
Limax.
Enteus.
Geo Nav Pro,
M-Nerve.
Kev MacD.
Team Noltex,
Gas Station Tuna.
Trexzer.
Korsgat,
U-Tox 2 Rocks.
GSM ×2.
Whidbey Island Gal,
Logwork.
Seabeck Tribe.
Fairwood West,
Peach of Washington.
UDAC.
Genies,
Just finding our way.
Sprouter.
Wino Seattle,
Tick Magnet.
Green Words.
Camp Clan,
Flagman.
Kettle Barb.
Wet Coaster,
Rar 285.
LG 9000.
Keats 94,
Wow, didn't even hardly hear that. Kid Vegas 19.
Sege Hove,
Dora Moore.
The new patron Just Carlo.
and another new patron, BC Rock Crawler.
Alrighty. Gosh, I'm sorry that Frau Potter had to jump off so quickly, but we're so glad that she joined us. And thank you, Frau Potter, if you can still hear us.
Wherever you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. Your support helps keep the quality shows coming. If you like the show, click the Patreon link on the cashingnw.com website. Now, if you didn't like the show, let us know what you want us to talk about. In either case, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more. Subscribe and give us a review. Now, if you were in a restaurant, you would tip. If you were in a live audience, you would clap. But since you're on a podcast, leave us a free, fast, fabulous, fantastic 5-star review. You can also call in to 253-693-TFTC and ask a question, or meet us at a virtual cache any time of the day or night. And of course, you can email us at feedback@cashingnw.com. Join us every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific for a live show and livelier chat. The show's produced by Chris Humphenauer, Jim Paulwitz, Jay Kennedy, and Brian Lang. I don't know. You guys may have just, switched. It's like a Freaky Friday on a Thursday. The show's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, copyright 2023 by Chris Humphenauer. Folks, I ask you to stay tuned for, where is it? There it is.
The after show.
The
after show.
There we
There's
go.
An echo in here.
Funny.
I don't think there's a ton of after show content though.
There's some. I see CRS 98 says if he's able to join in the next few weeks, it'll be from France.
Wow.
Very cool.
Well, listening to a podcast doesn't incur any international charges.
No?
No.
Well, not if you download it. Yeah.
That's true.
Very cool. That's funny. I was just, when Cindy disappears, like, oh no, because I think she forgot that there's more to the podcast. Either that or she got disconnected again. I don't know.
That's okay. She was a trooper to stay.
She was to come back after. Yeah. Oh, her battery dying. Perfect storm, right? I see there's a request for a boat story from you, Jim.
I reminded. It's very short, but if we have any other stuff, you can get to the.
No, Starcacher says it's already Friday for him.
Oh, okay. Just a little thing that triggered early on in the podcast that you were talking about 17 boats out there on a kayaking thing through the slough or whatever. And Chris, I think, made the comment, boy, you could just walk across, then after. And I think I did see GSM times 2, the boating safety officer saying, pro tip, do not stand up in a kayak. But it just triggered a completely unrelated yet walking from boat to boat story. My father served in the Army and served in World War II. Didn't really, my understand, he didn't talk a lot about his Army experience. I don't know a lot of what he did, and I think that's fairly common with a lot of people that went through the war. But he didn't, my understanding is, didn't actively fight in the engagement over there, but he did serve in Europe as part of the occupying forces. And the one thing I remember him telling me, he says, we sailed across the Atlantic, and he said, when we went over there, I think you could have walked to Europe by stepping from boat to boat to boat. That's what triggered the memory. And he said, and it always meant something, or, he says it was so significant to him that when he came home from Europe, there wasn't another boat in sight.
Read into that what you will.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was one of the few stories that he shared with me, and I thought, walking from boat to boat story. Yeah, that. So.
Wow. Impactful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was just going to share a quick FATAS for myself. Tomorrow morning, new video goes live. It's been a little while since I've had one out. This one is about our experiences tackling the WSGA Geo Tours. So if folks are looking for a little insight, go back and listen to our previous prior episode with MC3 Cats, where we asked lots of questions. But the first of what will be a few videos of our WSGA Geo Tour experiences. The first one where we really talk about the feels of the experience, as well as, you know, showing some of the great scenery, etc. Check it out on YouTube tomorrow morning.
Is your inside out of sight?
Out of sight, dynamite.
Well, with that, and on that bombshell, folks, join us next week. And until then, get out and get caching in the North.